Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives, and today we're going to be concluding our discussion on the spectacular Spider-Man tie-ins to Spider-Geddon as we take a look at Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man number 313. So, last time on Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. So after the Inheritors managed to make their way to Earth 616, Moreland pretty much just did a beeline to New York because, well, he had a personal vendetta with the Peter Parker of the main Marvel Universe, and so just wanted his ass to be grass. While Peter fought valiantly against Moreland, it was still sadly a one-sided battle that was not going in Peter's favor. And while he did try and do an escape attempt by having J. Jonah Jameson bring him his dimensional teleporter, sadly that wound up getting crushed alongside Peter's wrist, which essentially left him at Moreland's mercy. Thankfully, Peter got some extra help with the arrival of Miles Morales, who wanted to bring Peter to join his side of the Spider Army, but ultimately Miles could only assist Peter in just holding Moreland off for a little while, with the fight even taking Peter and Miles to the zoo. As such, while wandering the zoo, Peter wound up coming up with an idea of how to potentially take Moreland down. Essentially, just hit him with enough tranks to put him to sleep. Though in order for this plan to work, he told Miles that he had to go, as he had to have Moreland's attention focused squarely on, well, himself. And likewise, since Moreland's back, odds are the rest of his family are as well, so Peter pretty much tasks Miles with going out and helping the other spiders take care of them. Something that Miles does take to heart, and even wishes Peter good luck before he ports back to Loom World to join the remaining members of the Spider Army. In the meantime, Peter gets ready to try and gear up to face Moreland, who he and Miles left behind in a blown up cafe just to slow him down. But ultimately, as Peter's gearing up, the comic ends with Jonah showing that he's been trying to get his own help for Peter, as he's managed to assemble a SWAT team from the local police to try and help Peter go in and stop Moreland, which is where issue 313 begins, as Peter and Moreland are pretty much just suiting up to face down the other. Moreland, after having been nearly blown up from the cafe, is still walking, though his clothes have also been shredded. He's still wearing pants, but they have essentially been shredded up to be short shorts, so he needs something to cover up his upper body, so he ends up grabbing a souvenir t-shirt, which I find hilarious, but whatever. In the meantime, Peter essentially reworks his costume as he takes what's left of his mask and turns it into like a little mask to cover up the bottom of his face while putting some makeup on over his eyes. And likewise, after he casts up his arm where his wrist was broken, he just gears himself up, grabs a rifle, or grabs a gun and a trank gun and a trank rifle, as well as plenty of tranquilizer darts, and basically both Peter and Moreland get ready to just face down the other. With again, the narration being a callback to the 3 times thing, as both Peter and Moreland have talked about how they faced each other 3 times too many, and how it has to end here and now. And so the battle once again commences as Peter and Moreland meet, with Moreland continually trying to hunt Peter. Of course, Moreland has no idea where Peter is, but thankfully Spidey is able to track him down and, well, starts tranking him as he's hiding in a nearby tree and just shooting darts at him. Of course, one trank isn't enough to take Moreland down. He's an inheritor after all, and even mocks Peter for even going with the strategy at all. But Peter just keeps sniping him from his location as he keeps hitting him with tranks, which does get on his nerves. Peter, for his part, is just having fun with this. He loves seeing Moreland getting ticked off at this and even thinks, I could do this all day. Unfortunately, though, Peter's plan kind of gets thrown for a loop as the SWAT team that Jonah called arrives. And like I said, since Peter's plan kind of requires Moreland to keep his attention 100% on him, yeah, the SWAT team are not making things any better. Of course, and as such, Moreland immediately directs his attention to them as they tell Moreland to just drop whatever he's doing and come quietly. But Moreland's an inheritor, and he's saying fuck that as he just runs up and starts attacking them. Peter is thankfully able to come in and help them by trying to web up Moreland, but even that's not going to work well. With Jonah while Peter is trying to get Moreland off of the police, Jonah arrives and tries taking credit for everything, but Peter just tells him, no, this is just making things more complicated. If you really want to help, tell these guys to just pull back and at least get some tranquilizers because I have a plan going on. Of course, Jonah's not exactly okay with leaving Peter alone with this homicidal monstrosity, but ultimately Peter assures him it's for the best. Though, unfortunately, Peter and Moreland are taken away from the fight because Peter shot a web line at Moreland to try and pull him away, and at first the web was taut. Then it goes slack, and he appears like, slack web line, not a good sign. At which point Moreland just tackles him and they both end up getting chucked into one of the exhibits in the zoo. Of course, the police try and reorganize and go back after Moreland, but Jonah is able to just kind of relays to them what Spider-Man is planning. And while they're just as reluctant to leave Spider-Man alone with Moreland, well, again, Jonah assures them that what they're doing, that what they have to do, that this is for the best. Spidey has a plan, and it requires that the police officers get a bunch of tranks, which the captain in charge does concede to, though he does have everyone still stay on standby in case Peter is potentially killed by Moreland, since, you know, Moreland is still a monster that could very easily cause a crap ton of damage if left to his own devices. As such, Peter is still reeling from the as Peter still fights Moreland. You can imagine to jab him in the eye with more tranquilizers, because even as Moreland was fighting the police, Peter kept jabbing him with more stuff. Basically, Moreland in anger ends up backhanding Peter into another exhibit, and it turns out this is the bear exhibit, and, well, the bear is not exactly happy with the intruders. Thankfully, Peter is able to knock the bear and Moreland aside when both come rushing at him, and so Peter is able to note that Moreland is getting slower. So the tranks are clearly working, but he needs to keep pumping him with more stuff if he wants Moreland to stay down. As such, with Moreland disoriented, Peter gets out of his way and ends up webbing him to the ground, and ends up webbing him to the bottom of the bear exhibit before Peter jumps away, hoping that if he wants to get this right, then he needs to find the Jonah and the police he called. However, Moreland ends up breaking through the webs and is getting more and more frustrated that Peter is outmaneuvering him, and he keeps telling himself, how is he doing this? How is he beating me again? But he keeps saying, no, don't overthink it. That's what he does. I'm a hunter. I hunt, I kill. That's my purpose, yada, yada, yada. But eventually, Peter manages to trick Moreland into following him through the penguin exhibit. And Moreland at first thinks he's got Spidey cornered as he sees him standing in the doorway of one room, and he ends up rushing at him. But it turns out this is Peter's plan. He says, oh, Moreland, let me get out of your way. As he jumps right out of the way, and Moreland ends up running right into a cage that Peter and the police set up for him. At which point, when Moreland realizes he's been had, Peter closes up the cage and then just tells the officers on standby to just go nuts, as they all open fire and just pump Moreland full of tranquilizer darts. So much so that he finally just passes out right there in the cage, which, yeah, I won't deny, that's satisfying, it's funny. At which point, Peter essentially just gives Moreland a giant reason you suck speech, as he talks about how, yeah, Peter and Moreland both know that Moreland is very much more powerful than Peter. He's stronger, he's faster, he's better than him. But the problem is that Moreland kind of relies on that fact. Because he's so strong, he doesn't try to plan anything out. He doesn't try to outthink anyone. He just expects to show up to a fight and win. Whereas Peter, he got smart, and essentially he ends this smackdown by pretty much just telling Moreland, you may think you're all that in a bag of chips, but the truth is, Moreland, you're basic. Which, yeah, that's exactly what Peter says. But either way, yeah, Moreland's down. As such, the police wonder what to do with him, and Peter just tells them to call the Avengers, and, well, as he believes they'll be able to have something to contain Moreland. In the meantime, though, Spidey needs a nap. He's been at work, like I said, at the beginning of these issues, he was already sleep deprived, and he just went several rounds with Moreland. He needs a nap. He needs a rest. As such, after Peter does thank Jonah for at least giving him for doing whatever he could to help, he asks if Jonah will be able to give him a ride, though in Peter's current state, Jonah's not willing to let him get in his car. Though he will pay for a cab, so, you know, that's nice. But either way, yeah, Peter finally manages to make it back to his apartment, and he's just so happy to finally have a moment to himself. He opens up his window, crawls over to his bed, just as happy as he slowly falls into its embrace, is ready to take a nap, before another portal opens up in his apartment, and from it comes Spider-Gwen, who is there to recruit Peter for the climax of Spider-Geddon. As such, while Peter silently curses that he's now back on the job, he tells Gwen to just inform him of everything on the way, and while Gwen's happy for his assistance, she also quickly realizes, oh shit, were you about to take a nap? And Peter's like, what? What do you mean? It's me. I'm always on the job. And so the comic ends as Peter joins Gwen through the portal as he's her next recruit for the climax of Spider-Geddon. So there you go. But all right, so first thoughts on the issue. Honestly, it's a pretty decent finale. Again, there's not really much to the story beyond what you see is what you get. Again, there are some twists and turns, and there's some minor twists and turns with the tension of the story, like when Peter's plan gets disrupted by J. Jonah Jameson and the police trying to give him a hand, which ironically only hinders whatever Peter was planning to do. But otherwise, though, the ending of the comic is still pretty straightforward. It's honestly, it's just and there's nothing wrong with that. After all, like I said, the basic of the whole, the basics of this whole of all three of these tie-in issues is this just that the whole plot line is Spider-Man versus Moreland, and that's exactly what you see. Just Spider-Man trying to do everything he can to take Moreland down by any means necessary without actually killing him, and it's done well. I like, so they really keep and it comes together perfectly as Peter sums up exactly why he beat Moreland in the final parts of the comic when he gives Moreland his smack talk, because, well, Moreland is more powerful than Peter. He's stronger. He's faster. He's just better. He's got enhanced durability and greater agility. He can pretty much just outmatch Spider-Man in every field imaginable, except one: his mind. Because again, that's the fatal flaw with the Inheritors. They all may be strong, but they over-rely on those abilities to the point where they just expect to show up to a fight and win. That doesn't mean that all Inheritors are dumb, because of course we got Genix, who's the smarty of the group, so he typically can think things through as well. But again, when it comes to the majority of the Inheritors, they over-rely on their own natural abilities to get them through things. And as a result, their biggest weakness, they never strategize. And and as like Peter said, that was his ace in the hole. Moreland definitely had power on his side. And the fact that he was just so relentlessly hunting Peter to the point where Peter barely got even a few seconds to himself, it was not looking good for our favorite web slinger. It looked like Spider-Man was definitely going to die. But ultimately, by using his brain, Peter was able to devise a way of getting around Moreland's natural strength. And so that's what led him to thinking of utilizing the tranquilizers. As the more he pumped into Moreland, the slower Moreland got, the weaker he got, to the point where he and Peter were starting to get on an even level. And because Moreland was slowly losing, it just caused him to get more and more frustrated and continue going back to his signature gimmick of "I'm stronger than any spider, I'm their apex predator," and blah blah blah, which allowed Peter to further turn the battle to his advantage, as it allowed him to lure Moreland somewhere that he couldn't do anything, and then when he was finally trapped, to just trank him even more. And as a result, he's down again. It's smart. I like that, and it's again one of the things that I love when the Spideys face the Inheritors. They don't beat them by overpowering them. They beat them by outthinking them. They come up with strategies that the Inheritors can't think of. They manage to find ways around the Inheritors' own natural abilities to take them out, and it's smart. And it's exemplified perfectly in this storyline. And I like seeing Peter kind of utilize his brain to outmaneuver Moreland and come to a swift victory. It's good, and I like it. Again, it's good, and I like it. And the finale with Peter finally getting back to his bed and about to take a nap, only for that to be disrupted when Spider-Gwen shows up to recruit him to take part in the ending of Spider-Geddon. I admit, that part's kind of funny in a sick way. You still feel sorry for Peter because he clearly does need a nap, but I do like how he just got back with dealing with this super uber powerful villain, and yet suddenly Gwen's like, "Quick, I need your help with something." And he's like, "Fill me in on the way." I like that. It's honestly kind of funny in a mean way, so I dig it. I like it. So yeah, fun issue. But as for the story as a whole, again, it's just decent. It's good. Nothing too big. There's nothing really too big about the Spectacular Spider-Man tie-ins to Spider-Geddon. As I've been continually saying, what you see in these issues is what you get. It's just Spider-Man versus Moreland. And as I've hopefully continually showcased while looking at these issues, that's not bad. What we see throughout the comic is just a high-stakes situation that's made high stakes by just the tenacity of the villain. Moreland wants Peter's head on a pike for all the times Peter has beaten him, and he does not want to face defeat again. And as a result, he's just trying to cut right through the treacle. Take Peter out of the equation right there, right then, because he just wants him gone, and he knows that if he leaves Peter alone for even a little while, Peter will devise a way to beat him. That makes everything much tougher, and as a result, Peter gets banged up a lot lot in these tie-ins. He gets wounded, his limbs are broken, he gets bruised up, he can barely walk, his costume is ripped to the point where when he does have his final confrontation with Moreland, he has to rework parts of it just to be able to still conceal his identity. And again, what makes everything still work, in my opinion, is that Peter eventually that in order to beat Moreland, Peter does have to think of a solution that essentially gets around Moreland's natural abilities, like going back to utilizing the tranquilizers, which I think is a smart solution, as Moreland in his overconfidence just doesn't even think about this sort of thing. But the thing is, with him being an inheritor, it doesn't make him invulnerable. His tolerance for pain is higher than other people, and he can take a lot of shit, because, like, going back to Spider-Verse, Karn got impaled with a signpost, and he just ripped it out of his body. But the thing is, that doesn't mean the inheritors are invincible. If they were invincible, then they wouldn't need clone bodies to preserve their consciousness whenever they died. So clearly, they can still be taken down. So likewise, while Moreland may have a higher metabolism than your average person, that doesn't mean that the metabolism can counteract everything. And odds are, it does have a breaking point. Hence why the idea of utilizing tranquilizers to just weaken him a bit by bit until they can eventually knock him out is a smart solution, and I like it. And kind of going back to Moreland, he's actually one of the few inheritors that doesn't undergo the whole turn into a baby thing that happens at the end of Spider-Geddon. Yeah, I'm not even kidding. It's something I forgot to mention when I talked about Spider-Geddon, but yeah, when the rest of the inheritors were turned into babies, sans Solus, Moreland was not included in that because, well, he wasn't there for the final battle. As I said, he ditched the inheritors because he wanted to go fight the main universe Spider-Man. But then But because of him doing that, he wasn't there for the final battle. He was locked away. And while Peter intended for him to potentially undergo this change as well, spoilers, he doesn't. In fact, to my knowledge, I think he escapes. He runs away and essentially essentially makes it his mission to reunite with his family and bring them back to their former glory. So yeah, Moreland is actually one of the few inheritors that makes it to the end of the Spider-Geddon event without being killed or turned into a baby to get his reset button hit. He's still out there and still kicking, and just as he was the introduction to the inheritors, he becomes the last of the inheritors too. So again, it helps kind of ensure that there's still a lifeline that you can utilize for future stories. So again, yeah, that's a thing. That's a thing. But again, on the whole, the Spectacular Spider-Man tie-ins to Spider-Geddon are, like I said, just basic, but it's good basic. It's just a simple, what you see is what you get. Spider-Man versus Moreland. And it's enjoyable. The action may be kind of... The majority of the stories may be action, which does kind of count as a problem for me, since because there's so much action, a lot of the comics do kind of tend to blend into each other, and as a result, certain stuff that happens in here tends to kind of be forgotten in the midst of all the punching and kicking and quipping and all that stuff. But the action itself is still really nice and still carries with it the tension that comes from having Spider face such a superior foe. There are still some legitimately good lines in there, as we see Spidey just continually going back to his whole quipping thing. How Peter eventually takes Moreland down is very creative and smart, and utilizes one of Spidey's greatest strengths, his mind. And likewise, the ending with Spidey being pulled into the climax of Spider-Geddon by Spider-Gwen is still, I think, is the perfect way to end the story while still leading him into what happens in Spider-Geddon. So again, on the whole, the Spectacular Spider-Man tie-ins, while not amazing, are still really enjoyable, and definitely are, in many ways, may not be of the quintessential Spider-Man story, but it's still a damn enjoyable one, and if you chose to read it, I think you would have a good time. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. I thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and while we are now done with the Spectacular Spider-Man tie-ins to Spider-Geddon, we're not done with this trade, as there are 2 more comics that are collected in here that further tie back into Spider-Geddon. And these comics, well, believe it or not, are of the animated comic variety. Sort of. They're not animated in the book. They're just still images. But they were animated on YouTube, so they do count. And as such, for the first of these animated comics, we're going to check back in with the world of Marvel Noir as we see the last adventure of the Spider-Man of that world. So, till then, I hope you have a good Saturday, and as always, take care.